Hi, welcome to the Imagination and Inventiveness Reading Suitcase. We're gonna talk about how to use this particular reading suitcase. And if you haven't used a reading suitcase, not a big deal. They're super easy, super simple, and we're gonna walk you through each steps and help you know how to help your student learn and do all of these different activities. So let's jump right in and look at the materials that are provided for you in this reading suitcase. You get a parent guide. In the parent guide, you are going to have a breakdown of the activities, what to do, when, and what questions to ask when reading a book. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second. The student workbook is going to have all of the paper materials your student is going to need to complete any of the activities. So any graphic organizers, articles, notebook paper, graph paper, any of that sort of thing is in the student workbook. In this reading suitcase, there are 3 different books that we're going to work with. And you can see them here, a picture of each of their covers so you can recognize them super easy. You have Iggy Peck Architect, which is a super cute book. It talks about Ignatius Peck, the little boy you can see there on the cover, and he likes to design buildings and build things. He's an architect, and is kind of frowned upon in his 2nd grade classroom. And so he deals with that, and you get to see him learn to show his passion anyway. And you see up in the upper right hand corner what to do with an idea. It talks about having an idea and growing your idea and protecting your idea and sharing your idea. And sometimes people don't agree with your ideas and all of that. So it's a super fun book. It can spark lots of cool discussions. Ada Twist Scientist is about the little girl, Ada Twist, and she's a scientist, and she asks lots of why questions and how and what, and she tries to figure out how things work, and sometimes that doesn't go so well. So your kids should like each of these books. They're each have fun activities to go with them as well to help them learn from the stories. You also have all of the materials you need for any of the activities. So if an activity says it needs a protractor, which you do need a protractor for activity number 3, then your protractor is in the bag that you got with your parent guide, your student workbook, and the books. If you need a highlighter, it'll be down in there. Everything you need to complete any of the activities is included in the reading suitcase. You don't have to go find them. So let's look at how it works. You can see here on the right side of your screen, we have a picture of the parent guide. This is the first page of the parent guide, and it covers all of activity number 1 as it is in the parent guide. The very top, and this is the same for each activity, you have the number of the activity and the name of the activity. And now the order of the activities does not matter. You do not have to do them in numerical order. You don't have to do 1, 2, 3, 4. But the number is going to then help you identify what materials you need in the student workbook because they're labeled the same way. So activity number 1 in the student workbook is also called activity number 1, Discover a Scientist. So it's just to help you find what you need. If you look at step number 1, this is where you're going to be told which book to read and what questions to ask, and then also where to ask those questions while reading. So in activity number 1, you are reading Ada Twist Scientist with your child, and then asking those bulleted questions that you can see right there on the screenshotted picture of activity number 1. So if you look at question number 1, it says, what does observing mean? And you're going to ask it on page 1 after the word observing, as it says right there in parentheses before the question. And it says this for each of the questions on each of the activities. Then you have steps 2 or 4 or possibly 5. Some of the activities might have a couple more steps than just the 4. It's going to tell you how to introduce the activity to your child, and what the activity is, and how you're going to do it. So in activity number 1, you're going to tell your child, according to step 2, if you just read right there, that Ada Marie Twist from your book was named after 2 different actual real-life scientists who were women, Ada Lovelace and Marie Curie. And then they're going to choose to read an article either about Ada Lovelace or Marie Curie, and then do some research and learn about that woman scientist. Step 3 is telling you that you're choosing your scientists, just reiterating which of the 2 women, and that you only have to read 1 article. And then step 4 is telling you that after you've read the article, you're going to fill out a discovery worksheet or graphic organizer, and this has questions that you just have to answer based on what you learned from the article. And this setup is the same for each page in the parent guide. It's going to tell you what the name of the activity is. Step 1 is going to tell you what book to read, what questions to ask, and then any remaining steps is going to tell you how to go about introducing and completing the activity. Then, if you look at the student workbook, this is also on the right side of your screen, a picture of the first page of the student workbook. It says, just like I said, activity number 1, discover a scientist, right there at the top, so it's easy to find what you need to go with the instructions you're reading in the parent workbook. It's going to say one more time, choose one of the articles to read, and then fill out the worksheet that you'll find after both of the articles in the workbook. And so again, the student workbook is all worksheets and written materials that you need to complete any of the activities. And they're going to be laid out just like this, with the activity number and name in bold at the top of a page, followed by any materials that you need for that activity, and then the next activity. So then you also are going to want to know a little bit about why you're doing these activities with your child. Activity number 1 is based on a reading standard. They are learning to read the nonfiction materials, this is the articles they provided, and how to pull the important information out of those articles, how to read critically. In activity number 2, they're working on writing narratives, which is tied to a writing standard, which is another thing that they're going to need to know how to do. They are going to imagine what an idea they have that could change the world is, and then write a fictional narrative about their idea and how it's going to change the world. They have to structure it in paragraphs and work on the writing skill. Activity number 3 is based on a math standard about measuring angles. So you need a protractor for this one, which will be in there. It's included in your materials. And they are designing a bridge like Ignatius Peck did in Iggy Peck Architect, and have several angles that they have to be sure their bridge contains. And so they're going to have to measure the lines in their bridge and find and make sure that they have a 45-degree angle and a 90-degree angle. And then you have activity number 4, based on a science standard of identifying Earth's characteristics. And so they're going to use their inquiry questions that help them think like a scientist to identify a mystery item that is a characteristic of the Earth. And they're going to use all of their senses and ask all of their questions except sight. They aren't going to look at the atom, so they're going to touch it and feel it and smell it to try and figure out what this is and identify this characteristic of the Earth. So they're each based in a standard from the 4th grade, and are going to help your students work on that standard and master that skill. And you get to help them do that by having it included in the reading suitcase.